This video is part of a series about the A-level chemistry topic of electrode potentials and cells. We've already looked at how you make an electrochemical cell, what the conventional representation is for writing them down, and also the standard hydrogen electrode. In this video, we're going to look at what you can use these standard potentials for and the calculations to work out the potential differences for cells. If you build a circuit with a cell in it, like the kind of circuit that you would have built in Year 7 physics, that cell has a potential difference. It has a certain ability to push electrons around a circuit and to cause a current to flow. In fact, all electrochemical cells generate a potential difference, causing a current to flow, and we can measure that potential difference in volts. Now, in electrochemistry, we tend to call this potential difference electromotive force, or EMF. EMF is measured compared to the standard hydrogen electrode, which we met in the previous video. If those standard conditions of 298 Kelvin, 1 mole per decimeter cubed for solutions, and 100 kilopascals for gases are changed, then the EMF will also change. This is a really good example of how reaction conditions influence the potential difference that's produced by an electrochemical cell. And the reason it's such a nice example is that in both of our electrodes, we have copper metal submerged in copper sulfate solution containing Cu2+ ions. And so you might think that because we have the same species, the same metal and the same metal sulfate, that we wouldn't see a potential difference. But actually, we can measure a small potential difference. So why is that the case? Well, it's because the right-hand electrode, the right-hand half cell, is a standard half cell with a concentration of 1 mole per decimeter cubed. But our left-hand electrode, our anode, has a concentration that's much lower than that. Now, if you bear in mind that both of these half cells contain an equilibrium between the copper 2+ ions and the copper metal, because in our anode we have a much lower concentration of copper 2+ ions, this is going to cause the position of equilibrium to shift to the left in order to increase the number of those copper 2+ ions. And so therefore this is going to produce these electrons which are able to move through the wire to the cathode. And then at the cathode we're going to have reduction taking place. So these copper 2+ ions are going to join up with those electrons forming back into copper metal, while at our anode oxidation is occurring. Once we know the potential for different half cells, we can use these for two distinct applications. One is to put these two potentials together in order to work out a potential difference and therefore calculate the electromotive force for an entire electrochemical cell. And the second thing is that we can use this same process to tell us whether or not a redox reaction is feasible. And this allows us to know before we spend a lot of time and money preparing to do a redox reaction in the lab, whether there's any hope of it happening. When you're given a table of data containing half equations and asked to produce an electrochemical cell, the first thing to be mindful of is that these are all written as reduction potentials. And we know that within the same electrochemical cell, we can't have two different reduction reactions taking place. So one of these reactions is going to flow in the forward direction, as it's been written, and the other is going to have to be reversed. Now, we said in a previous video that within this electrochemical cell, the electrons are going to flow from the more reactive metal to the less reactive metal. But unless you have the entire reactivity series memorized, you're going to need to figure this out numerically. So the thing you want to look for are the E values, and what you'll see is that the more positive value, which in this instance is our tin value, is the half equation that is going to flow in the forward direction. So this is going to take place at my cathode. It's going to be on the right hand side of any conventional representation that I do. Whereas my less positive equation is going to be reversed. Now, it's important that you're mindful that when I say less positive, it doesn't have to be negative, or in fact, both of the values you have could be negative. So we're thinking about more positive and less positive rather than above and below zero. So my less positive equation is going to be reversed, and instead of having a reduction potential, we're now going to have an oxidation potential, where atomic zinc is separated into zinc 2+ ions and 2 electrons. So we can now build an overall equation for this reaction, and this one is quite easy because the electrons already balance, and we can see that overall in this electrochemical cell, our tin 4+ ions are going to be reduced by zinc to produce tin 2+ ions and zinc 2+ ions. Here's another similar example. Again, we have a half cell containing zinc and zinc 2+ ions, but this time it's been paired with a half cell containing copper and copper 2+ ions. Remember when you're writing the standard potentials to include the positive sign if it's a positive potential. The electrons are going to flow from the negative place to the positive place because, of course, electrons are negative and therefore are attracted to positive things. So here they're going to flow from the zinc 2 plus half cell to the copper 2 plus half cell. This tells us that the reaction where zinc is oxidised to zinc 2 plus ions is feasible by using copper, but the reverse reaction isn't. If I'm going to put these half equations together to make an ionic equation for the overall reaction, then I'm going to flip over the less positive half equation. So in this instance, that's the zinc one that is going to be flipped over. So this is going to give us copper 2 plus ions reacting with solid zinc, and that zinc is going to reduce the copper 2 plus ions to solid copper metal, leaving us with zinc 2 plus ions. A very common 1-mark question asks you to take two half equations and calculate the overall potential difference, also known as E cell, for that electrochemical cell. Now there are two different ways that you can think about this, but it's really important that you only do one of them and don't try and do both. So my personal preference nowadays is this one. I take the two half equations that we have, and since we know which of these is going to be flipped over, we know that in this instance it's the zinc half cell that will be proceeding in the reverse reaction. Then I flip that half equation over, and therefore I also change the sign that I have here. And having done that, I can then just add up the two of these and see that overall I'm going to have a potential difference of 1.10 volts. Now, the alternative to this, which is how I was taught and it is mathematically equivalent, but I tend to find people find more confusing, is that you nominate your more positive half cell as being E1 and your less positive half cell as being E2, and you don't change the sign at all, and you then do E1 subtract E2, and that's still going to give you that same answer of positive 1.10, because we're mathematically doing the same thing. So this is one of these concepts that just makes a lot more sense once you've had a go at it for yourself with some numbers. So there are 6 questions here, and the first thing you need to do is predict the overall reaction. So you need to identify the two half equations that are going to be part of that electrochemical cell. You need to identify which one will go in the forward direction and which one needs to be reversed, and you need to balance them and use those to make an ionic equation. And then you're also going to calculate what the EMF is using the E values that you've been given for each of those half cells. So pause the video and give this a go now. So we've kept this quite straightforward in that in this question you've only been given one half equation per species that could be used. So for this first one we've got the zinc based half cell and the nickel based half cell, and I can see by looking at the E values I've been given that the value for nickel is more positive, so that's going to take place in the forward direction, whereas our zinc half cell is going to be reversed, and so instead it's going to take place as an oxidation potential, and instead it's going to have a value of positive 0.76. And I can also see here that both of these equations have got 2 electrons, so I'm not going to need to worry about any balancing at all. So we're going to end up with nickel 2 plus reacting with zinc to form nickel as a metal and then zinc 2 plus ions, and our E value overall is going to be positive 1.01. Then for the silver with the iron, the silver is going to be reduced from silver ions to silver metal by the iron 2 plus ions, and we're going to have an E value that's only 0.03, so that's obviously not a very useful electrochemical cell. Then we have the magnesium acting as a reducing agent to reduce the copper 2 plus ions to make copper, and we've got plus 2.71 as our E value. Then the barium reduces the tin ions from tin 4 plus to tin 2 plus with an E value of 3.05. Then the silver ions are reduced to silver metal by the presence of the chromium 2 plus ions, and we have an E value of plus 1.21 volts. And finally, the copper plus ions are reduced to copper metal by the hydrogen gas, and our E value is positive 0.34. It's important that as well as being able to use this numerical data to assemble an electrochemical cell and to calculate the overall electromotive force, that we can also describe in words what's happening in terms of electrons and why it's happening. So we've met this example a number of times before. This is our Danielle cell, and the first thing that we're going to identify is that the electrons are going to be flowing from the zinc-based half cell to the copper-based half cell, and we're going to describe those half cells in terms of both of the species that are present in them. Now, the reason that we know that this is what's going to happen is because the value for the zinc-based half cell is more negative than the value for the copper-based half cell. Now, it doesn't matter that it's a negative number. That just tells us about how powerful a reducing agent zinc is compared to hydrogen, because that minus 0.76 value has been found by comparing to the standard hydrogen electrode. So we're not actually interested in the fact that it's a negative number. What we're interested in is the fact that it's less positive or more negative than the copper. So this is about hierarchy. So because we have this more negative value, we know that the electrons are going to move away from this half cell and towards the other half cell. And the reason that this happens is that zinc is a more powerful reducing agent than copper is. And we know that reducing agents are electron donors, so they are themselves going to be oxidized. And so that zinc there is actually going to be turning back into zinc 2+ ions and 2 electrons. And it's those 2 electrons that are going to flow around to the copper-based half cell. So here are 3 examples for you to have a go at, and there are 4 marking points you want to make sure that you're covering. So firstly, we need to know what the flow of electrons is going to be, which half cell it's flowing from and to. Then we need to describe how we know that and what that actually means chemically. And then finally, we need to work out an overall value for the electromotive force for that particular cell. So in our first example here, we can see that we have a more negative value for zinc compared to for silver. So our silver is going to be our cathode and our zinc is going to be our anode. And we're going to have electron flow from the zinc-based half cell to the silver-based half cell. We can tell that because we have a more negative value for the zinc-based half cell, and this tells us that zinc is a more powerful reducing agent than silver. And then finally, we can put these together to make electromotive force. Since we've said that this is our value for our anode, we're going to either subtract it or reverse the sign and add it on, but either way you should have got a value of 1.56 volts. Then similarly for our second example, the electrons are going to flow from the nickel-based half cell to the iodine-based half cell, because the nickel-based half cell has a more negative E value, because nickel is a more powerful reducing agent. And then again, we're going to reverse the less positive value here, and so we're going to end up with an overall electromotive force of 0.29 volts. And then finally, our electrons are going to flow from the iron-based half cell to the copper-based half cell, because we have a more negative E value, because the iron 2+ is a more powerful reducing agent than the copper metal. And so again, we're going to flip the sign or subtract this more negative value and get an overall EMF of 1.11 volts. Now, possibly the more interesting thing to do with these electrode potential data is not just to construct electrochemical cells, but to use those electrode potential data to make predictions about redox reactions that can happen in the lab. So in this example, we've got some copper chloride, which contains copper 2+ ions, and we're trying to reduce those copper 2+ ions back to make copper metal. Now, you could just take your copper chloride and put a load of pieces of metal in it, but that will be wasting a lot of chemicals. So instead, we can use these electrode potential data to tell us what would and wouldn't work. So what we're trying to make happen is for this first half equation here to proceed in the forward direction. And we can see that we have an E value for it, and as long as that E value is more positive than whatever we're trying to pair it with, then this reaction will be successful. So if I try to pair it with this second equation here with the zinc, you can see that is a much more negative value, and that's because zinc is a much more powerful reducing agent than copper. So zinc would be able to reduce the copper 2+ ions. And remember, we're looking for reducing agents here on the right hand side of these half equations. Then if we look at nickel, again, we have a value that is less positive than the copper-based half cell. So again, nickel would be able to function as a reducing agent. If we look at the iron-based equation, then that's no good for us, because that value there is more positive than copper, and likewise this value here for silver is more positive than copper. So those two we can rule out, and we wouldn't be able to use those as reducing agents. And then finally, our tin-based value is again less positive than the copper. So how would we actually describe this in terms of answering an exam question? Well, we would say that zinc and nickel and tin 2+ ions are all more powerful reducing agents than copper, and the reason that we know that is because the E values for those specific half cells are lower than the E value for the copper-based half cell. One way of thinking about this is that if you were to replace a redox reaction with an electrochemical cell which was completing the same reaction electrochemically, if the value of the electromotive force is greater than 0, then that reaction is feasible. So in this example here, if we have zinc functioning as our anode and copper functioning as our cathode, then we're then going to end up with positive 0.76 because we flipped the direction, therefore we flipped the sign, plus 0.34, and so that would give us an electromotive force of 1.10 volts, and so that would be feasible. Whereas if the electromotive force is less than 0, then the reaction is not feasible. So if we were to switch these over and have copper as our anode and the zinc-based half cell as our cathode, then we would then have minus 0.76 plus minus 0.34, and we would have an electromotive force of minus 1.10 volts. And so that's less than 0, so this reaction here is not feasible. So this question is quite similar to the copper chloride based one that we looked at, but with the added complication that we now have two different equations that both contain vanadium based species. Now, just in case you haven't done the transition metal topic yet, in this first vanadium based ion we have an oxidation state of +5, and in the second one we have an oxidation state of +4, and then of course our monatomic vanadium here has an oxidation state of +3. And so what we're looking for is a reducing agent that will allow this first equation to proceed in the forward direction, but that won't allow the second equation to take place, because we don't want to make vanadium 3+, we want to stop when the vanadium has an oxidation state of +4. So our reducing agents, remember, are going to be these species that are on the right hand side of the equation, and so those are the three that we're looking at. And what we want is for something that will be less positive than this first equation. So we want this first equation to be the most positive, but then we want it to be more positive than this second equation so that the second equation doesn't happen. So essentially we're looking for something where if we subtract it from 1, we get a number that's larger than 0, but if we subtract it from 2, then we don't get a number that's larger than 0. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to rule out this chlorine-based equation here, because that number is more positive than our first equation. So this tells us that actually chloride ions are very much not they're not a powerful reducing agent. And in fact, chlorine is a very strong oxidizing agent. And if we were to try and make this happen, we would just end up oxidizing our vanadium back to this initial species. So that's no good to us at all. And then the second thing that we're going to notice is that for this zinc-based half cell here, that's also no good to us, because even though it is a less positive E value than my first equation, it's also less positive than my second equation. And that's because zinc is a very, very powerful reducing agent, and it would just reduce the vanadium through all its different oxidation states. So we're left with this fourth equation here, and then of course the question wasn't just asking us to identify the half equation, it was asking us to identify the reducing agent. So as we said, our reducing agents are on the right hand side, so it's going to be our iron 2+ ion that is the reducing agent that we want to be using.